Hello and welcome to today's video on Johns Hopkins ABX. Today I'm going to spend a few minutes introducing you to the resource as well as sharing with you how to access it on UK's library websites. I'll wrap up by spending a few minutes comparing Johns Hopkins ABX to Lexi-Drug to give you a better idea of when to use each resource. So what is Johns Hopkins ABX? First of all, it's important to know that the ABX in the title stands for antibiotics. So this resource is a guide entirely built around antibiotics and antimicrobials. It also includes sections on vaccines, but by and large, its role is to help ensure that proper antimicrobial stewardship is being practiced. Johns Hopkins ABX is a point-of-care tool like Lexidrug. That means it gives you summaries of important information that are designed to be used quickly and efficiently in a clinical setting. These summaries provide comprehensive information about diagnosis, drug indications, dosing, pharmacokinetics, side effects and interactions, pathogens, management, and, as mentioned, vaccines. It can be accessed in two different ways. First, via the website using a web browser, or as a mobile app installed on your personal device. Let's quickly cover how to access both versions of the guide. Before we get started, it's important to note that in order to set up the mobile app, you need to visit the website first. The mobile app isn't a requirement. You can continue to use the tool via the website. However, in a clinical environment, it's probably easier to have the mobile app downloaded for quick and easy access. And the easiest way to access Johns Hopkins ABX is via the College of Pharmacy Library Resource Guide, and particularly under the section for PharmD students. You can also access it a number of other ways, including on the A to Z database list for the library, the pharmacy database list specifically, but the library resource guide for PharmD students is your best bet because it's probably where you'll be accessing most of your other resources as well. As mentioned, you need access to the desktop version before you can set up the mobile version. There's a link for mobile access set up in the top navigation bar of the guide, so let's start on the Pharmacy Library resource page and walk through accessing this resource. Here I am on the Getting Started page for the College of Pharmacy Library Resource Guide. If you want to start here to access Johns Hopkins ABX, you can, because you can see that there is a link here under Frequently Used Databases that you can use if you prefer. However, if you are a UK pharmacy student, I recommend that you bookmark this section specifically for PharmD students because it has a larger collection of links to different resources and databases that you will probably be using throughout your career as a student. You can access the PharmD page by clicking on PharmD up here in the left side of the navigation bar. On the PharmD section of the Pharmacy Library Resource Guide, you can find Johns Hopkins ABX under the Drug Information dropdown. It is the second link listed. So here we are in the desktop layout for Johns Hopkins ABX. To download the mobile app, click Mobile here on the top navigation bar and follow the instructions given. Johns Hopkins ABX is essentially an index of different antibiotics, infectious diseases, and other related information. It's formatted in the way that it is, in an alphabetical list, because it used to be published in book form as a reference guide, and it maintains some of that structure still in the digital version, with topics under headings that you can look up alphabetically, similar to an encyclopedia. When you enter, absolutely everything on every topic is listed alphabetically because it defaults to all topics on the left navigation bar. Hence the fact you see drugs listed together with conditions like abdominal abscess or abscess lung together on the same page. If I go to the left navigation bar and click on antibiotics, you can see that antibiotics are broken down by type, and if I click one, I continuously narrow down my selection. If I click on a drug name, you can see it's actually fairly close to Lexidrug in the fact that it provides information like adult dosing, pediatric dosing, complications or dosing, adverse drug interactions, But it goes into a little more detail in the fact that it provides a little more in the way of pharmacology and spectrum. At the very end is an interesting part where they not only cite their resources used in this summary, but they provide justification in text for why this resource was included. That's an uncommon level of transparency on why these specific citations were chosen in the literature, and we really like to see this. If I go back to the main page and select another option from the navigation bar, you'll see that it's essentially set up the same, but with different topics. Under diagnosis, I have a variety of different types of conditions that I can select and work my way down into the condition or disease that I am specifically looking for. If I select bone joint and look at this and say, oh, that doesn't look like many options for bones and joints, just remember that this is a guide only for antibiotics and vaccines. So the content is limited to that. And under each condition, I'm given a very detailed breakdown of clinical presentation, general considerations, diagnosis, treatment, and even follow-up and pathogen-specific therapy that is very, very detailed and much more in-depth than what you would find in Lexi-Drug. Because Lexi-Drug is more focused specifically on the drugs, where Johns Hopkins ABX spreads out to discuss disease state, treatment, diagnosis, and more in those areas. Once again, going back on the main page, if I select management, management provides very detailed guidance on everything from managing fevers to screening and prevention of infectious disease for special populations to travel-related conditions. If I select pathogens to the left, you can see this section is broken down specifically by type of pathogen, i.e. bacteria, algae, virus, fungi, etc., etc. And in each one of these is again a very detailed summary on this specific pathogen, including a microbiology breakdown, clinical presentation, treatment follow-up, and again, what we love, the basis for the recommendations, which appears in every Johns Hopkins entry. This is a great section, this pathogen section, because there's no other resource, at least that is owned by UK, that includes this angle of accessing information by pathogen. So it's really unique and special and should be taken advantage of. Once again, back on the main page. Finally, in vaccines, this section covers all the major needed information on vaccines in great detail, greater in many cases than Lexi-Drug. This includes the type of vaccine, indications, and recommendations for providing the vaccine based on age, boosters, adverse reactions, vaccine-drug interactions, contraindications, immune response, efficacy, and more. This is probably the most in-depth vaccine summary available in a point-of-care tool. So again, if you're seeking information on vaccines, it is highly recommended that you don't just rely on what could be found in Lexidrug or other resources, but that you actually go and use Johns Hopkins ABX. We already covered this to some extent, but as a quick roundup to end the presentation, let's spend a quick moment comparing and contrasting the differences between Johns Hopkins ABX and Lexidrug. The most important thing to remember is that Johns Hopkins ABX is for vaccines and antibiotics, so it is narrower in scope, but it is very deep in what it covers. Lexidrug, on the other hand, covers all drugs, some supplements, has patient education information, and more, so it is much wider, but also as a result, shallower in its content. Lexi-Drug has great information about drugs specifically, but Johns Hopkins ABX goes into more detail about diagnosis, disease state, transmission, pathogens, and so on. So while both resources are valuable in their own right, you would probably lean towards using Lexidrug for drug information about over-the-counter drugs, prescriptions that aren't related to antibiotics or infectious disease, natural products and supplements, and looking up things like drug interactions and Y-site compatibility. But if you're looking for infectious disease management, treatment, anything to do with antibiotics, antimicrobial stewardship, or vaccines, Johns Hopkins ABX is more likely to have a deeper, more thorough coverage of the information you're looking for. Thank you for watching this video. If you have any questions about the content of this video or any of the others in the drug searching series, please contact the Medical Center Library at mclib@uky.edu. That's mclib@uky.edu.